was before my time.
Okay, I'd like to start the City of North St. Paul City Council. If everyone could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mary, if you could take roll.
Councilmember Thorson?
Here.
Councilmember Peterson?
Here?
Councilmember Walzak? Councilmember Sonic?
Here.
Mayor Furlong?
Here. Quorum is present. At this time, a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved, Your Honor.
So moved by Councilmember Walzak, second by Councilmember Peterson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. So at this time, we do have a presentation. It looks like they're all walking in, so we better quick get this going here. What is this?
This is Viper Fostnet, Ladies Night Out for the German American Carnival Club of Minnesota. And if you're all looking and wondering what that's all about, it's part of the carnival season.
Oh.
Do you want to,
We don't want to ruin your own.
we got the mic?
You better take your tie off. It matches so nicely.
They don't want to cut your real ties. Oh, I want to cut his real tie.
Thank you for your patience. We're a German American Carnival Club that celebrates Carnival from November 11th to Ash Wednesday. And on Viper Fostnet is usually on a Thursday. That's part of the, it's before Ash Wednesday, 4 days before Ash Wednesday. And that's the beginning of when they really celebrate Carnival over there. And it's Women's Night Out. Back in the 1800s, women's were not allowed to go out with the men to a party like this for Carnival. And it was typical in the United States too. Women were not, they were home to bake and cook and have babies. That's about what it was. So anyway, there was a bunch of washerwomen that got tired of just being home on that night. So they all dressed up and went out to party. And so that's what they did. And what they did is, you know, the cutting of the ties. You guys will all get ties from these ladies out here from the other Hexen. And the meaning of that is to cut them off. Because what is the significance of it? It's your power. So we want to get rid of your power today, ladies.
So
You better get the right one.
What about he forgot
That's
his?
his own tie. He won't cut his own tie.
I can tell a funny story about cutting ties off. When we were in Germany in 2000, I went to cut off somebody's tie, and I actually was pretending like I was going to cut it up by the knot. And his eyes got just huge because, of course, he bought a $3 tie on the street to have cut off, but he didn't want me cutting the whole thing off at once because he had other ways.
Well,
And so now we have orders to give you.
Well, it doesn't match the shirt you have on.
Okay. If anybody has any questions, I can try to answer them.
What happens, who gets the most ties? There's a special prize?
The ladies do collect them and they pin them to the clothing. But I haven't seen any prizes given out, but it's really a big deal to get as many ties as you can.
And they still do this in Germany?
Yes.
All over Germany, or?
It's usually around the Rhineland where Carnival is. I haven't seen it in the Fasching area, or the Fastnacht area, but I know it's along the Rhineland.
So-
Because German, I think Carnival really started in Cologne, and it was the peasants that started it, because royalty was around them, and they were making fun of the royalty.
And this is separate from Oktoberfest.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
It's from
That's a
November
whole
down
nother
to
party,
Ash
okay.
Wednesday. They had to gear up for this in October.
so it's just another party.
It's just another party.
But no beads. No beads, no beads.
Okay, so that's Mardi Gras.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, and I think the French took,
they stole from us.
I think the French stole from the Germans, they started this Mardi Gras, and, because Carnival disappeared for a while. And then I think the Germans came back and brought it all back.
We got a question in the audience there.
Okay, yes? It's better to be a W than you know what. I don't know if that's true or not, but I don't think that. I think it was, I read something about starting in the 70s, they dressed it more like the American witches, because a lot of things has transferred from the West to Germany. Some of the music that they have that are really in German, it's usually like, it's more upbeat, like rock, not rock and roll, but similar, more melodic though. Good questions though. Anybody else?
So we have a presentation for you.
I should introduce this young lady.
Okay,
Every year, we crown a prince and par, and we also have junior royalty. This is our junior princessin, Kirka the First. I am Hilarikeit Princessin, Kirka the First. And we would now like to present orders.
who goes first?
Did you get an order? Oh. No. Okay, well then, you get the ordin first.
Okay.
You're the mayor.
So we can give it away to other people.
Just the guys, I didn't get the tie.
You get a hat.
Oh, geez, thanks.
Like it. Why don't you guys come over here and we'll get a.
Work as a bow tie now. Oh, you got one too?
All the guys,
Wow.
even John Schmall.
Why don't you guys come up in front here?
Yeah.
We're supposed to hide in the back.
Do you want to come on this side? Yeah, so you have a little more even.
Yeah, get more.
I feel like we need some accordion music.
Should I present the key?
Only get 3 pictures.
You said one.
That's the official one.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So do you go to all the council meetings around town or?
Also, I want to say, if anybody is
You do,
interested,
okay.
please feel
Next
free
year,
to
we'll
phone
fix
us. We don't have an actual.
They were down in Cottage Grove last
Thank you. Minnesota Facebook.
And take donations.
Wow.
Can never take it another
Also, in the summer, we're out and about, we have a float. It looks like a cut off castle, but we have.
Wow.
You got 2?
Princesses will be on there and we'll be, they're doing great throughout the
Well,
town.
thank you very much.
We have come to North St. Paul, I think, last year, but I understand North St. Paul isn't having one this year.
Okay.
So, but you'll find us around. Well, it'll be posted on the Facebook page and the website when we get done.
I'll take the.
Now you're official. It's nice.
Yes. Yeah, beer's real German. That would be.
Bratwurst.
Yeah, next time bring beer.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Let's get the
Yeah,
little one.
appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks.
You're looking at Scott. Scott looks like you need one.
They're discussing the guy on the end.
Yeah, he better.
Tie, too.
I still kept my tie.
Well, thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you.
looks like one more.
Uh-oh.
Scott didn't get one.
Thank you all for inviting us.
Yes, thank you. We'll see you next year. Well, I'm not sure what just happened, but. Very interesting. Okay, so at this time, we have the consent agenda. It's the February 4th, 2020 regular meeting minutes, the general accounts payable of $2,229,258.76, the EDA accounts payable of $448, the HRA accounts payable of $12,390.83, application for a charitable gambling permit to conduct lawful gambling in the form of bingo and raffles by the Friends and Family of Ramsey County Care Center on multiple occasions in 2020 at the North St. Paul American Legion Post, League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust Municipal Tort Liability Waiver, the 2018 Pavement Management Project Final Project Payment, the 2018 Pavement Management Project Final Project Payment, and the signal agreement with Ramsey County for McKnight Road and Anchor Drive. At this time, if anybody wants to pull anything from the consent agenda, they can do so at this time. If not, a motion to adopt the agenda. So moved by Councilmember Sonic,
I'll second you.
second by Councilmember Walzak. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. This time, the meeting is open to the public. We have two, and the first one is John Schmall in regards to Casey Lake level. Welcome, John.
Evening, Mayor, Council. I had noticed in December that the lake level was higher than normal, and went for a walk like I have over the last 45 years went however long the beehive in the southwest corner. Beehive drain is located in the southwest corner, and took note that it was frozen up. There was no water leaving Casey to go to the remediation pond to the west and towards White Bear Avenue. So I took a picture of it and sent it to Bill Bartolje. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. It's like Buttigieg. They can't figure that one out either. And he thanked me for the picture. And I had a talk with Velison, who is supposed to be in charge of the project over by the where the creek comes in, which hasn't happened yet. And he said, yeah, we know it's frozen up. Well, when the outlet is frozen up, the lake rises. And it's not a problem that any of the homes are going to be on trouble. The problem that exists is that some of the sewer outlets, mainly the one that comes in from the northwest, is half covered with ice. So how far back it goes in, under the ground, that it finally melts. But if we get a rain in the spring, these weather things are strange these times, that a daylighted sewer outlet runs a lot freer than one that is underwater. And I noted the one that comes out in my backyard, whatever that thing on the end of the culvert has been crushed on the top because of just the movement of earth. Plus, it is underwater. And when anything near my house that is taking water off a Chisholm gets semi-blocked, I get nervous, very nervous. So I just want to let you know there's not there's nothing in the world that's going to melt any ice in the outlet. I don't know what's going to happen in the spring. I have no idea. But I thought I brought it to the attention of the watershed district early enough to get something more than, oh, thank you for sending me the picture. So just want to bring it to your attention that something could happen in the springtime.
Okay. Thank you, John. We have Sue Springborn. Come on down.
Oh,
Welcome, Sue.
hi. Sue Springborn, 2573 13th Avenue. Thank you, Mayor and council members. I have a problem I'm hoping you can help me with. I am fed up to here with my alley. The alley is, since 1973, we have maintained the alley. We have paid somebody to plow the alley, and it was working well when Floor Hogs lived there because they did it. Now, the landlord in the apartment building is no longer there, and they park their cars all the time in the alley. So the plow guy cannot plow straight back. Well, I have gotten 2 complaints from neighbors about where the snow is being put. And it's not the plower's fault. There is no place to put it, and they can't put it where they're supposed to because the people in the apartment park their cars there. Now, last snow, not this one, but the last snow, I just happened to be there when the plow guy came, and I went running down there and knocked on their door. And yeah, they came right out and moved their cars, so that was fine. Well, but they don't, I don't know. The landlord is not telling those people that they cannot park there. And I don't know what to do. I pay for it. I pay the plower for doing it. I should not have to run around the neighborhood asking people to move cars. So what is the policy? We had always been told that alleys that did not go through could not be plowed by the city. Is that right?
City Manager Dudek.
The alleys that we currently plow are paved alleys
Ours is paved.
that go through,
Oh,
that
yeah.
go through. But
Yeah.
there's many more alleys that are coming in play, like yours, that I think that's gonna warrant some, to at least look at changes.
Well, something has to happen because I'm sick of it. I have this landlord in the past, well, that's not your problem, that he doesn't pay for it. I don't care if I pay for it. I don't care about that. What I care is that I don't want my neighbor's shrubs getting wrecked. I don't want the other neighbor getting water because there is no place to put it. If you go down the alley right now, everybody knows how much snow there is. And then I look down there and I see that alley and that snow could all be down there. So what can I do?
Mayor, I think one of the first things that we could look at is enforcement of parking in the alley in the right-of-way. And having that conversation and notice with that property owner, and then if that doesn't take care of it, enforcement. Because basically that's what's happening is they're parking in the right-of-way.
Well, it sounds like we have some options that we could
Well,
possibly
and
look at.
I don't want to sound negative, but I know that will not work because I have told them myself. And what happens, I am quite certain, is these people that live in the apartment are very nice people, but I don't believe that landlord is telling them what they're supposed to do. And then the turnover is so great that, so,
Is there signage there? There's no
no,
signage.
No.
so,
Might be another option is,
I don't know, but what should I do? I need direction. I don't know what to do. I don't want to be running around out there in my nightgown telling people, move your cars, move your cars.
we don't want you out there in the account either.
I've been tempted.
I think that you're doing the right thing by bringing it to all of our attention.
Okay,
So the next step will be Scott will work with staff and probably reach a solution. If it takes council action, we'll
okay.
in front of us to discuss, but I think it seems like there's some steps that can be taken.
So I can go home and call my 2 neighbors that called me to complain, to tell them that something is going to happen. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sue. We have no public hearing. So at this time, city business and action items and recommendations. I might do something a little bit different here. Aaron, if you don't mind, because, no, come on up. Because we do have a group here that wants, it's extremely important to them what's going to be happening tonight. So what I want to do is possibly bring us to from the beginning to where we are now with what has transpired in regards to the process. Only because I received emails right away, not some friendly emails that weren't too friendly, that I would like to tell people that we're not in the process at the very beginning. The council is not in the process at the very beginning. And that's when I got those emails. And could you kind of explain from point A to point B where we are now, just so that they can understand a little bit of what?
Sure, I'd be happy
we
to do
are.
that, Mayor, members of council. So this was originally a proposal brought forth by the property owner and their developer for a townhome development. That was discussed with staff initially to figure out what sorts of approvals would be needed. At the time, we gave them some advice, and they came forward with an official application. That application went to the Planning Commission first, because they're the advisory body to the City Council. That first meeting was in December of 2019. And at that time, the Planning Commission was reviewing the preliminary plat, preliminary PUD, and a rezoning request for a portion of the property. At that time, they had some significant comments on the layout of the concept, and they sent the applicant back to do essentially a revision of the concept based on that feedback. What they did with the public hearing, they held a public hearing at that meeting. They continued the public hearing until the applicant came back with a revised application package. Then in January, the applicant came back not with a full application, but just a revised concept sketch, because they were seeking feedback from the Planning Commission as to whether they were on the right track. So at that time, we didn't have the revised application, so it wasn't an official public hearing at that meeting. But they did come back, have a discussion with the Planning Commission, got some feedback on the concept, that it looked like it was going in the right direction, took a few more comments. Then they came back at the February Planning Commission with a complete revised package based on that January concept. The public hearing was reopened in February. There was comment received. The Planning Commission deliberated and is now making a recommendation before you. So that's kind of the multi-month step to get here.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Sure.
So at this time, City Manager Dudek.
Mayor, first thing I wanted to, we have our presentation screens that we've all been living through the integration of the new equipment to make it the best experience possible. And unfortunately, our vendor integrator was out here today to do some tweaking on the system. And what we've ended up with this evening is no operation of our two large monitors on the sidewall. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to present or show on the screen Erin's presentation. We will have it on her laptop that our cable operator will zoom into that so that it is going out live and will be something that you could look back on a review or archive for that point. So I want to apologize for that. Our operator is online with the vendor right now trying to see if there's anything that can be done tonight, but it doesn't look like it because they were here doing programming on the system today. So with that, I will bring it back to Erin for her presentation of the 2242 7th Street, the PUD.
Welcome, Erin. Again.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott, members of council. As I mentioned, what you're looking at tonight are three requests. There is a rezoning request from R1 to R2 for the portion of the property that will have townhomes on it. There is a planned unit development overlay that is being proposed, again, for the townhome portion of the project. And then there is a preliminary plat which covers 18 townhome lots and 3 single-family lots that are facing 6th Street. So I'll walk you through each of those three. Just as a matter of background, there are currently 4 parcels that are under request tonight. They have frontage on both 6th Street and 7th Street North. It is a heavily wooded parcel right now. It's across the street from the Urban Ecology Center, across 6th from the Urban Ecology Center. And in total, there are about 4.23 acres. The parcel where the townhomes are being proposed is about 3.4 acres, so the rest of that is for single-family homes. What I mentioned, the applicant had come back with a revised concept. This is the most up-to-date concept and plan set that we have. There is a cul-de-sac proposed off of 7th. That would be a private drive that is accessing 18 townhome units. There are 9 duplex, single-story townhomes that are proposed. The plat would cover all of the parcels, so we have some single-family parcels, 3 of them facing 6th Street. As I mentioned, the PUD and the rezoning is only for the townhome portion of the lot. They're requesting a rezoning to allow for townhomes, which are not permitted in the current zoning district, which is R1. As I'll get to in a minute, the density that they're proposing would actually pretty closely fit in with the R1 density, but townhomes are not permitted. The planned unit development is being proposed because of some deviations they're requesting for lot width, lot size, and I'll get into that in just a moment. The proposal is for the townhomes to be owner occupied. Each individual townhome would be on its own lot. And the outlot that's proposed here is that private drive, which ends in a cul-de-sac. The density of the proposal on just looking at the townhome portion would be 5.25 units per acre. That's gross density. So if we take the area of the whole parcel, divide it by 18, we get 5.25. If we take out the area for the private drive, the net density is 5.8 units per acre. Your comprehensive plan, which has this parcel and the one to the north recommended for future land use of medium density housing, recommends 6 to 12 units per acre. So they're a little bit below what's recommended in the comprehensive plan. Although I'll point out that the comprehensive plan densities don't have to be uniform across all developments. There can be some variation, so keep that in mind. The R1 zoning district, which is what it's zoned now, has a maximum density of 5.5 units per acre. That's based on the minimum lot size that you have in your R1. The R2 zoning maximum density is 7.3 units per acre, so that's some perspective on where we're going with density. The footprints of the buildings, if you look at 2 of the townhome units together, it's around 4,900 square feet as a footprint. They are single story, as I mentioned before, and the rear setback requirements are met on the lots, and so that helps to provide a buffer from the adjacent neighborhood. And the single story helps with visual impacts from the surrounding neighborhoods as well. There has been there was discussion at the Planning Commission meeting, and I believe some correspondence that you received regarding the setbacks of the 2 proposed townhomes that are on the corner of the private drive and 7th Street, so I wanted to share some information with you. The corner townhome sits about 28.5 feet from the curb, the edge of 7th Street. 13.5 feet of that is right away, and then there's a 15-foot proposed setback from the property line. 15 feet is the required corner side property setback. For perspective, looking at the surrounding area, the homes across the street on 7th sit approximately 36 to 40 feet from the curb. If you look at the house that's directly adjacent to the parcel to the south, that home sits about 30.5 feet from the curb. So we would be looking at the townhome sitting approximately 1.5 feet closer to 7th Street than the closest structure to the south. I will also mention the, let's see here, let me go back to this. Lot widths, they're requesting some deviations from the lot widths. The lot widths, let's see, I think I have a figure. Maybe I don't. The lot widths range from 27 to 53 feet. The 27-foot widths are around the cul-de-sac where they narrow. Most of the rest of them are around 45 to 50 feet wide. Most of them are 44.25 feet wide. And again, that's because each townhome has its own lot. The lot sizes range from a little over 5,000 square feet to over 12,000 square feet. The smallest lots are on the north side of the private drive. In the original concept, the proposed private drive cut the site relatively in half, so the lots on the north and south were about the same size. Based on feedback at that December Planning Commission meeting, the applicants have shifted things northward to preserve more of the trees on the south, and so that's why there are smaller lot sizes up there. And I will point out that the private drive that's proposed is 24 feet in width. That's the pavement width. There's a little bit of excess area on either side in that outlot to allow for the back of curb. The driveways, which I've highlighted a couple of them here in green, each of the duplex buildings has a shared driveway. So the green that you see on the screen is just an example of those shared driveways. They are about 22 feet wide or less. Some of the ones along the cul-de-sac are narrower than that. The idea there with providing those shared drives is to provide spaces for visitor parking so that they can park off the street. There will be garages with each of the units as well for the residents. But because of those shared driveways, another one of the deviations that's being requested is an exception to your requirement of a 40% maximum front yard impervious surface. That's required for any residential development in the city. 4 of the townhome lots comply with that, 14 exceed that. And as you can see, the main reason for the non-compliance is the driveway. Total lot coverage for each of the lots, that maximum is 50%. 6 of the lots exceed that 50%, and those would be these 6 units on the north side of the private drive where the lot is not as deep, and again, because of the shared driveways. Taking a look at landscaping, setting aside for a moment the existing trees on the site, if this were, and it is, a brand-new development, it would require 21 trees, so that's 1 tree for each residential unit. That includes the 3 single-family homes here, so 18 townhomes and 3 single-family. So that's what you're seeing on the screen, 25 new trees being planted. Tree removals were discussed quite a bit at the Planning Commission meetings and at the public hearing. And so the Planning Commission and staff requested that the plan be revised as much as possible to preserve as many trees as possible. We did note that there is no requirement for tree preservation that's in your ordinance right now, but we do require identification of significant trees that are going to be removed. And so we've included that as a condition that would need to be carried forward to before final PUD approval. The use of the open space, we do have open space requirements per residential lot, and it looks like they have far in excess of what is required. That's 500 square feet per lot is required. However, we did note that stormwater areas cannot be counted towards that requirement, and so again, at final PUD, we would be getting details on exactly what the area is of the stormwater and making sure that they meet the open space requirement. One of the things regarding tree preservation that we discussed at Planning Commission was that if the site remained in R1 zoning and it was proposed to be developed as a single-family subdivision, we again don't have any tree preservation requirements, and so conceivably single-family homeowners could take down the trees on their lot and there wouldn't be anything that we can do about it. So because this is a PUD, we have a little bit more review authority and have the chance to work on preserving some of those trees. Architecture is not required at preliminary PUD, so this will be coming back to Planning Commission for another public hearing and back before you for final approval. But we did get a rendering from the applicants. We made a couple of suggestions about variation in their where the buildings are sitting. Also, with regard to the setback, the corner setback issue that I mentioned earlier, it's certainly something that we would want the applicant to take a look at, the side facade of those buildings that are facing 7th Street. We'd want to make sure that those were designed a little more intensely so that it's not just a blank wall that's facing the street. And so that's something that we'll take a look at final PUD. And then engineering considerations. I will ask Morgan to come up and go over those.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I apologize, our choreographed switch around here included the 2 television screens, which are not working, so. But I wanted to, I think, point out a couple main points of interest maybe to the council public, things that were discussed at Planning Commission, things that were looked at by engineering staff before the preliminary approvals here come before you for consideration. But there are several engineering conditions that go along with this that make these approvals or this preliminary approval conditional. So the applicant certainly would, if this moves forward, need to accommodate all of those, and they include things like stormwater maintenance agreements and additional easements that need to be dedicated. So a lot of very fine detail or granularity that are not included in their plans now, but certainly would be required before this comes back before the Planning Commission the next time and the City Council for final consideration. But the major points I wanted to make here is that with the stormwater management approach that the applicant has proposed on their site, which is a 2-cell kind of ponding area on the eastern edge of the site, based on their calculations and review of engineering staff, that is shown to reduce the peak flow runoffs reduced in all directions for the site. So there's a reduction from the pre-condition or the pre-development condition to the post-condition based on their stormwater management approach. There have been some questions or comments about Sour Pond, which is immediately to the south of the area, as kind of an immediate end location for a lot of this drainage. And that pond does have a 24-inch outlet pipe, so there was some concern or some discussion about that pond not having an outlet pipe, so that is documented with city record drawings. That pond was actually constructed in, I think, the late 80s, 1988, 1989. I might not have the exact date. But there was some work at that time in terms of the improvement of the development immediately to the south, and those lots and the storm sewer for that residential area does drain into Sour Pond. At that time is when the city infrastructure was installed, both coming out of that right-of-way in the development immediately to the south and also that outlet to the pond as well. And also there was some conversation revolving around traffic. And I can state for the council that these 18 residential units does not come close to meeting the threshold for requiring a traffic study. So staff would not recommend or require a traffic study or a traffic impact analysis for something of this size. It doesn't really come close to that threshold. And I can state just from my experience that this type of development, residential, these number of units would certainly be expected to be handled from a capacity standpoint with the surrounding existing roadways without any sort of expected improvements like turn lanes or other things. So just wanted to make sure that that was stated for the council's benefit. And as I mentioned, as a part of the staff recommendation, from an engineering standpoint, there's several conditions that go along with that is included both in your packet and I believe in the resolution by reference as well too. So those will all be things that, again, from a strict engineering standpoint, that staff will need to be following up on and making sure that the applicant does right by satisfying those before this comes before the council and the Planning Commission before that the next time.
Thanks, Morgan. And so to wrap up, the recommendation from staff and from the Planning Commission was conditional approval. There is a long list of conditions in the resolution and in your staff report, but a few of the highlights that I'll hit here, confirmation of the open space area, developers agreement, park dedication fees, reviewing architectural details, and all engineering conditions. There's one last thing that I wanted to bring up. It's also a condition of approval. There was some information supplied by some residents regarding a potential eagle's nest on the property. That information got circulated to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which is the regulatory authority for eagles and eagles habitat. They deferred doing a survey of the property. They requested that the developer or the property owner do a survey to see if there were any nests. At the public hearing, the property owner stated that he didn't find any nests there, but and so the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is the one that would regulate that. We did put a condition in just in case more information came to light that whatever is found would have to meet their regulations as far as not disturbing the nests if it ends up being regulated. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I know the applicant and their engineers are here as well.
At this time, we have any questions for Aaron? Councilmember Sonic.
Aaron, what is the standard side yard setback for corner properties, or do we have a standard throughout the city?
Good question. Yes, we do, Councilmember Sonic. It's 15 feet is the required corner setback. So they are meeting the corner side setback requirement.
So the setback that they're looking at for those two properties that are on the corner of 7th Street and the new private road that would be built is standard with the setback for side yards on corner properties throughout the city.
Correct.
Can we also, we had exchanged some emails about this also with Mr. Aurelius, who's in the audience here tonight. There's a property that's directly to the south here, and Mr. Aurelius had even sent a picture with a measurement that he said was to the back of the curb, was physically measured 24 feet. So would that not be even closer to the street than what these properties would be?
Yes, it would. So obviously, we didn't go out and physically measure anything, but taking Mr. Aurelius's measurement, he measured it, 24 and some distance from the curb. Our GIS measurement is 30 and a half feet, so that would be, we measured it a little further. I'd let him explain, but yes, the new townhomes will be sitting 28 and a half feet from the curb.
Right, but they are consistent with the setback requirements that are standard throughout the city?
Yes.
Okay.
Again, this is not a public hearing, but Rob, if you want to just make a brief comment, that'd be appropriate.
25 feet to the curb, my added up was 41 or something feet. I subtracted the 13 and a half and just concentrated to the lot line, which is 25.
Does that answer the question at all? Or?
Yeah, it's a little confusing on your drawing, but I understand what you're saying. I think we had, and Aaron, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that there were other properties on the block that had been measured to be about 30 feet from the back of the curb to the property itself, which would be a difference of about 18 inches.
Yes, although from looking at the GIS measurements that we took, we didn't go out and physically measure any of these. The ones across the street are about between 36 and 40 feet from the curb. And the house to the north is about 40 feet from the curb. So we measured the one to the south at a little over 30 feet.
But those ones that are 30 to 40 feet from the curb, that's a front yard setback, which
Correct.
is a different requirement, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So again, regardless of whether it's 28 feet, 30 feet, or 40 feet, it meets the setback requirement. What is being proposed meets the setback requirement.
Yes, that's correct.
There's not we are not providing a variance for that.
Right, that's not one of the deviations that's being requested.
Thank you. I also wanted, as long as we're right here, Aaron, I wonder if you could maybe touch on, I don't know if it's not really irregularities in the R2 zoning, but some of the things that we have discovered as part of reviewing not just this property, but others when it comes to R2 zoning in North St. Paul, and for them to be compliant with some of the zoning that we have provided for. Some of our requirements make it almost impossible for it to happen. Like, it's mathematically impossible for someone to meet the development requirements for R2 zoning and to meet the maybe the lot coverage, the lot width, things like that. So you can see even lot width with this development proposed is, it's variances for each lot, I think. And yet at the same time, when you look at the density that would be achieved with this development as is, I think if I'm correct, Aaron, it's 5.8 units per acre. And the minimum for R2 density is 6. So it goes anywhere from 6 to maybe 14 units per acre.
In the comprehensive plan for medium density programs 6 to 12 units.
Right. So the density in this proposal is actually less than the minimum for R2. The maximum for R1, were this property to stay R1 and have single-family homes, it could have a density of up to 5.5. So for this to be an R2 development, it's very low density and yet still requires variances from the lot width requirements and from the overall coverage, I believe, was the other one.
Yeah, the difficulties we found during our review was that mainly with the lot width and being able to meet the density that's programmed, there's a minimum 60-foot lot width, and at that width on any lot area, if you carve it up per that, it's very difficult to reach the density that you're aiming at for medium density.
Another way to look at this is that what we've got here in this proposal are 9 buildings. I think Aaron, you had suggested that if this were to be an R1 single-family home development, there could potentially be 15 buildings, 15 homes, single-family homes built on the same property. So in effect, what you've got here are 9 buildings that are built on roughly 88-foot wide lots. If that helps to kind of, that was something that, for me, helped to make some sense of the lot width issue that we're talking about here. And I think that even the lot width issue is something that the Planning Commission probably has to address further in how we have written our code, because it may be something that we're too stringent on those lot requirements in order to even allow for the R2 density to exist. So when you're reviewing this particular development or any other development that should happen to come up before the Planning Commission might change anything, I think it's important to keep that into consideration, that as we're looking at these variances that are being requested as part of the planned unit development, some of those variances, it's like you wouldn't be able to do any R2 development without some of these variances unless they just went straight up, but then we'd have height variances that we'd have to be considering, if we wanted to do multi-unit housing that would go upwards rather than outwards. And these are single-level duplexes. So it puts the Planning Commission in a difficult position, I think. Sometimes it puts the council in a difficult position because you're trying to understand how much variance, how much leeway are we having to allow in order to allow a development on this property. But I think in some ways we've put ourselves in that position because of that the zoning is not conducive to allowing any kind of development in that way, if that makes sense. But so it puts us in a difficult position sometimes, even despite the fact that I think if you were going to put an R2 multifamily home development on a piece of property, this is about as low impact as you could get. Like I said, it's below the minimum requirement for the density for R2, so.
I had a couple of questions while you're here. You stated that townhomes are not allowed in R1. Kind of curious as to, maybe that's not to this particular project, but maybe a bigger picture that the planning commission can kind of bounce around. But why, is there any particular reason why? And then what's the difference between a townhome and a duplex? Are they
Right.
interchangeable, or is it just?
There's not much difference between a townhome and a duplex, but this is one of the issues that we have started to broach at the Planning Commission level as we're going to get into some ordinance revisions is, as far as density goes, this project would fit more with the R1 than the R2, quite frankly, but townhomes aren't permitted, so it wasn't something that the Planning Commission could consider. It has to be rezoned, and the PUD has to be overlaid also because there are shared lot lines, like the lot lines go straight through the middle of the duplex. And so because of that, it can't be considered under straight zoning either. So that is something the Planning Commission's aware of and we'll be discussing.
I'm trying to think back of some more recent developments. There was, is it called Cardinal Glen or Cardinal Point? That's off of Cardinal Gardens off of 17th. And there's, I believe those are kind of very similar to what's being proposed to be put in here.
Yep.
That was originally, was it just a wooded area, or was maybe there was a house back there? There's one house that went in, so I would imagine that had to go through this process. It had to go from an R1 to an R2. They put in a private drive. Then there was, I think, where the old transitional care center was, behind Northwood Park. Now that was, I don't know what that building was zoned before. It was probably mixed or some special conditional use. But, when that happened, I believe there was some rezoning that needed to take place too. And so when we see these things come up, just like if there's, if we see multiple variance requests for one item for a resident, we look at it as a whole and say, well, maybe we need to go back and look at the zoning, because why do we have this rule if it's not in compliance with the community and their needs? And so I'm just kind of thinking maybe this is one of those items where, like Tom illustrated, it's not very impactful. It's kind of in uniform with that R1 spirit. So, why aren't we allowing things like this in R1? And why are we having to go through this process of rezoning? I mean, I don't know all the staff time that it's taken up, but it just seems like it may be worth looking into moving forward, that if these sorts of projects continue to present themselves, maybe that it would behoove us all to moving forward, looking at making those kinds of modifications.
So part of this, and I don't know if this was mentioned yet tonight, but this property was already, we had already planned for this to be rezoned R2 no matter what, as part of our comprehensive plan update, so that we just passed last year. So the property would be rezoned R2 within the next 6 months, whether this developer was trying to put townhomes on it or not, right? So we were already there. I don't know if the Cardinal Gardens, aren't those all single-family homes on that property? They're not. Okay, so then it would have had to have been rezoned to R2. But so there's, I think, part of it is that you look at the housing needs that exist throughout not only our community but the greater community, and there's a need for there appears to be a need. The developers are risking a lot if there's not. And this is something that had been identified in the comprehensive planning process as well, that there's a need for single-level homes that are of this nature. So these duplexes would be handled under a, It's the association, so people wouldn't have to shovel their driveways, they don't have to mow their lawns. So you're looking for a certain clientele, and then also these are people who would be not necessarily wanting to live in a high-traffic or city center area, you know. So there's an opportunity here for something like this. So undoubtedly, it's disruptive and difficult for the people who have lived there for a long time, or even if they haven't lived there for a long time, because they're very much accustomed to having a densely wooded property right in the middle of their block, and I understand that completely. It's you know, these types of changes are hard, but as the city, we have to look at what are the laws on the books and what do we allow or not allow according to the laws that exist. And when I look at what the compromise that it seems like we've come to with this development from what it was before, and after a lot of resident feedback and consideration by the developers, this seems to be a reasonable compromise in that way. And I think it has come to this point where, like I said, for R2 or even R1, that this is about, if this property is probably going to be developed sometime or other, no matter what, somebody's going to develop it, it's private property. So this is about as low impact as you can get, I think. Aaron mentioned earlier, if it were left R1 and somebody wanted to develop it with all single-family homes, those property owners could cut down every single tree. They could build houses as high as they could go according to the zoning. They could have several outbuildings. They could have, you know, lots of vehicles. They could, you know, you just never know. I think that with the planned unit development overlay that we have, and with this R2 development, Aaron mentioned it, it does give us some latitude to put in requirements with the developers, even with the look of the side of the structures that face the street. I mean, that's an opportunity that you would not get with a single-family home. So, anyway, sorry, long rambling there, but we're trying to give a little bit of background from where we started to where we are now.
And I think we went through the same process with the M&I homes. You know, we had the public hearings, we had, you know, it went through the process, the vetting, and what the outcome was. You know, the residents all gave their input, and at the end of the day, it was a good product, and the residents were happy with the outcome. We weren't 100% happy, but, you know, I would say 99% a good product at the end. And I think for me, I get a lot of requests for, you talked about the type of housing, and we don't have enough single level housing for our residents. Our residents are aging, and these aging people are calling me. I've had a few, and saying, you know, we'd like to stay in the city. We'd love to stay in the city, but we need a single level, an association, like you say, the plowing and the snow removal and all that. So there is a need for this type of housing, and we don't have a whole lot more of properties like this within our city. We're very limited to this amount of property. We just had one in our neighborhood that there was a house that was torn down, and they put 3 houses in. You know, boom, because it was a bigger lot, and it happened. So that's where I am. Anybody else?
I just had a couple other quick questions just for clarification, and they're on items, conditional items F and G. I'm just going to read them just so everyone knows. The applicant shall provide an inventory of all major trees proposed to be removed on the site with the final PUD. And then the item G is the applicant shall comply with all review procedures regarding a potential eagle's nest on the property as specified by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. So I know you covered both those items, but just, you know, for my sake and understanding this, we'll start with the tree inventory. You had stated that we don't have a current policy as far as tree preservation,
That's correct.
but we do have the ability with this PUD overlay to have some sort of control over how many trees are removed or
Right, so with the planned unit development, one of the reasons that you would approve a planned unit development is for, you would allow some deviations from the ordinance in exchange for some public benefit. And that can be a wide range of things. Tree preservation could be one of those things. If it's a priority for the city, you could look at the inventory of the major trees and try and figure out, require that a certain number of them be preserved. But yes, if it were a straight zoning development without a PUD, there aren't any tree preservation requirements. And in fact, there aren't any requirements in a PUD either.
And so the original proposal, there was a modification, with kind of that shift with things to the north, in that spirit of preserving as many major trees as possible. But, I guess, what's a major tree? There's not a definition and we don't have that. So that's kind of where I'm a little concerned because that's a subjective thing. I think you could ask 10 people and you'd hear, maybe 6 or 7 different answers. So what's the ultimate goal or outcome here with continuing to have this as a condition?
I think part of the reason that the Planning Commission wanted to keep it in there was so that they would have the information. Right now, they don't have the precise information about where all of the significant trees are. You're right, there's no definition in your ordinance of what a major tree is or what a significant tree is, although we have some best practices that we will share with the applicant as they do their tree inventory. So yeah, I think it was mostly informational. It's actually a requirement on your site plan checklist, even though you don't have any preservation requirements. And again, I think it's so that the council and the commission can make their most informed decision.
Okay, because I don't recall seeing anything like that in previous projects, certainly not the M&I. I know there was some tree removal there, but I don't, so I guess it's just the verbiage of what a major tree is. I just hope that's not problematic down the road and how, they pay for a survey, identify what guidelines are given as a major tree, but then, there's conflicting opinions on what a major tree is. Item G, the eagle's nest, we keep, it's potential. The Fish and Game have kind of weighed in and said, not to our knowledge, there's nothing here. The DNR's also weighed in. Where does this go?
I think the conversation at the Planning Commission was just that if there was any additional information that was supplied between now and the approval of the final PUD that the Fish and Wildlife Service would want us to consider, that's why it's still in there, just in case there's something identified.
And the reason why I'm pointing these two out is because when you read these listed conditions, they stand out from everything else. Everything else is kind of really technical and just a part of, the city sewer and water main, all that kind of stuff. But these are just seem kind of open-ended. And what is the expectation of the applicant that, has this been satisfied or?
As of now, they're in compliance with Fish and Wildlife Service. If any other, additional information is supplied either by neighbors, or by the property owner, by the city, and Fish and Wildlife says, yeah, that's maybe something we should look at, then we want to make sure they're complying with Fish and Wildlife regulations. I think technically the applicant would have to do that anyway, whether or not we had this condition in there. Fish and Wildlife is the regulatory authority, and they would have to do that regardless.
And is there this bald eagle is, I understand, a little different than squirrels and rabbits, but, is there other wildlife that this is gonna, kind of snowball?
I'm not aware of any at this time. There hasn't been any information supplied about other wildlife that might be regulated by Fish and Wildlife.
There can be.
Yeah, there
and
could be.
That was cited, I think, even by our city attorney, that there are other protected species that if they are identified, and I don't believe it absolutely restricts all development, but that there might be something that developer would have to work around, or there would have to be some specific measures that would be taken. But at this point, nothing like that has been spelled out. There has been nothing, there's been no evidence that there is a nesting site for bald eagles or any other protected species on that property right now. So is there all sorts of wildlife that goes through there and lives there? Yeah. But, you know, I mean, there's wildlife all over. But will it reduce habitat? Yes. It will. But there's no regulation at this point against that. Every house that was built on that street reduced habitat.
Okay, I guess that's just my concerns about these two items kind of seemed a little open-ended in that they seem to be both addressed from what I'm hearing.
Anything else for Aaron or Morgan? All right, so at this time, am I doing all three separately?
And I would just ask that you do them in the order that they're listed. So the rezoning would be first.
Okay.
And then the preliminary plat, and then the planned unit development last.
Okay.
Mayor, if I could, just before you
Sure.
move to that business, Mayor, member of council members, I just wanted to note from a legal perspective that zoning decisions are very discretionary. They're a legislative decision of the council body. So you do have the ability to have a lot of leeway in making these kinds of decisions. The sorts of things that you discussed this evening certainly make sense to consider. You want to make sure that when you are making a zoning decision, that it's done in the best interest of the public, that you're doing it to promote public welfare, public safety, and to accommodate certainly changes that occur. Under Minnesota law, zoning laws are not meant to be static and remain permanent in nature. And so just as we've discussed, there's differences that we've seen in the R1 and the R2 that haven't offered enough flexibility for certain individuals who've expressed concerns with those regulations. That is in part why we do have our planned unit development overlay district in our North St. Paul City Code. So you do have the ability to provide that flexibility when it's appropriate and consistent with public welfare as a council body. So I just wanted to provide that explanation for what you're doing today, and that it is consistent should you choose to approve it with our current North St. Paul City Code and regulations. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, City Attorney. Any questions for the City Attorney? If not, motion is for resolution rezoning property located at 2242 7th Street North from R1 Single Family Residential District to R2 Mixed Residential District. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Sonic.
I'll second you, Aaron.
Second by Councilmember Walzak. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. At this time, we have a resolution approving a preliminary plat for a major subdivision for the property at 2242 7th Street North and 2231 6th Street North. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Councilmember Thorson.
I'll second you.
Second by Councilmember Walzak. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And the third one is the resolution approving a preliminary residential plan unit development plan for the property located at 2242 7th Street. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Councilmember Sonic,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Thorson. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. City Manager Dudek.
Council, the next item I have is the renewal agreement, if you will, for a fiber optic capacity agreement. Excuse me. Fiber optic capacity agreement that we've had previously with the Ramsey County Library. And this is coming up for renewal again. So this is the same agreement that we've had in past. The updated in this would be the fee, which would be $2,400 a month. And this, the term of this agreement would be July 1st of 2020 through June 30th of 21. And this is again providing fiber optic connectivity services to the Ramsey County Library as listed in the document. And this is the same arrangement that we've had over the past few years. If you have any other questions, otherwise we're looking for your approval.
Any questions for City Manager Dudek? Councilmember Walzak.
I'm just curious, how does the amount that the library is being charged compare to other people that we are selling the same to off of our line?
We sell to this is really who we sell to. As the county, we don't sell to any private businesses in this. This is all just an institutional network. So we're not providing services out to any other businesses per se.
Any other questions? If not, the motion is for agreement between the City of North St. Paul and Ramsey County Library Board for the use of fiber optic capacity.
So moved, Your Honor.
Moved by Councilmember Peterson,
Second.
second by Councilmember Sonic. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. City Manager Dudek.
That's the last business action item for this evening.
This time, reports of City Manager. City Manager.
Well, many not to continue our conversation with the development, but that continues to occupy time. One thing I'm proud that we completed last week, we had our local business association meeting was held at the American Legion, our monthly meeting, and we had a presentation up there with the general membership of the business association and actually beyond. We had sent out letters here from the city to all business, current business members and others throughout the city, really trying to get as many people involved as possible in what's going on in North St. Paul, what's coming up on proposed projects and approved projects. And we had an outstanding turnout. I think we had nearly 100 people there for that event. And it was, it's really exciting to get the involvement of the community and show what's coming forward and what's going to be happening this summer through this construction season and beyond into the upcoming years with some of these projects. It also was noted, it was very timely. I don't know if you've seen this, but in the Star Tribune, North St. Paul was listed as as number 4 in the hot residential market in the area here. So we've come a long way from where we've been in the past in development and activity in the community, and really looking forward to this being a positive impact for our community.
Reports of council, commission, and committees. Councilmember Sonic.
I have nothing, Your Honor. Thank you.
Councilmember Walzak.
I have nothing, Your Honor.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yeah, I attended a League of Minnesota Cities workshop last week on communications. If you have some sort of a real bad situation in your town and just how to address the media, which I wouldn't be doing it, but the city manager or another spokesperson or the mayor. They kind of gave you some keys and on how to do things, and I thought it was pretty well, it was informative to me. So, and that was available to anybody to go to it, so it was a 4-hour.
4 hours?
Thanks. 4 hours.
Wow.
Thank you.
Councilmember Thorson.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate what Scott said about the business association meeting last Tuesday. It was a great turnout. I know he had mentioned at the meeting that he hopes that that's the kind of future turnout that we have. So anyone that is interested in joining, it's open not just to North St. Paul businesses, but I think technically the name is the North St. Paul Area Business Association. So there's applications can be found online. You can contact myself, Mayor Furlong, City Manager Dudek, or anyone on the council or city staff, and they can get you in the right direction to get signed up for that. The meetings are generally they are the second Tuesday of every month. They're held at the American Legion from 11:30 until 1. Lunch is provided, and that is the bulk of what the annual dues pay for. I believe they're $150 now. So, yeah, we just encourage any businesses that aren't engaged to get engaged and to become members.
And I'll follow up with that just as the program that we had this past week. And that's really my goal, is to be able to provide to the Business Association, in addition to their own programming, but a program that we have every month, so that there's really an initiative or a reason for people to come and get something out of it. So the next month, our meeting in March, we will talk, we'll have a representative there in our own electric utility department there, talking about business energy audits and what we can do to help with those energy consumption needs and rebate monies and things like that. We'll also have a giveaway kit that will be available to businesses, similar to our residential kit that we've provided to our residents with LED light bulbs and things like that. There will be a business kit that we'll have available to people that attend that. It has a $100 value. And then in the following month in April, we plan to have representatives out from Biz Recycling to discuss business recycling. So again, that's the goal, is to have a program each and every month and really have a benefit for people to attend, and we're looking to really grow that.
Good. General business, Councilmember Sonic,
I have nothing, thanks.
Councilmember Walzak,
I have nothing, Your Honor.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yeah, I attended the City Hall with Senator Wigert and Representative Lilly. And of course, I brought up 120 and Highway 36, and they're, working on it the best they can. They want to get the trails involved. So it was a good discussion. There was some other people there too from the Capitol, but they're working hard, and with the bonding year, it's looking pretty promising. They can't promise, but I walked away with a good view of it. So, thank you.
Councilmember
I
Thorson.
have nothing.
And I just want to mention that an email went out this other day in regards to the parade, Fall Roundup Parade, that it's going to be canceled, and we are going to try to resurrect it. I know we have a representative here from the car show, and it's you. So we're going to do some talking and hopefully be able to not be able to keep having it. So we'll be in discussion the next couple of weeks here to keep it going. And
There's
that's
been a lot of talk of it. The people want it.
right,
Yeah,
right.
well, I think it's important to point out, though, that there is a lot of work that goes into putting these kinds of events on, and it's volunteer-driven. And I noticed, that email too, and there seemed to be a lot of negativity and complaints around it, but I don't know if many of those people that were complaining step up and help out. So here's your chance. If we're gonna pursue this to make accommodations, the reason why it was canceled was because of the construction. Step up and help out, get involved. There's contacts here at the city, and it just takes a lot of work, and something like that, can open up other opportunities once you see what's involved, so.
And Councilmember Thorson is our representative for the parade.
See what happens when you speak up.
Right.
I'll just follow up on that the car show, as we've talked before, and the things that we've done, steps that we've taken for this year to be able to adjust the car show. The car show is a very important piece that's been going on. This will be 26 years, and I think the parade falls into that same category. So I know the car show people have been, taxed with doing this, and I'm very confident that we're going to be meeting business association and other groups, and I'm very confident that we're going to have this back in place quickly, and we'll be done with a committee at large to be able to do that.
Good. Bob, if you can stay after, I want to talk to you real quick. If not, anybody else have anything else? Not, motion to adjourn.
So moved, Your Honor.
So moved by Councilmember Walzak, second by Councilmember Peterson. All those in favor, signify.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. 7:50.